Hello, CISD parents. My name is Dina Dinas. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, and I want to talk to you just briefly about the GT assessment process for 21-22. It goes without saying that it has been delayed just slightly as we have waited for some clarity around virtual learning, and some of our windows of assessment have been moved around to accommodate the remote learning opportunity that was just temporary during the first 9 weeks. So now that we have some clarity and we know that everybody will be coming back next Tuesday, October 12th, we are ready to discuss what our assessment plan will look like for this next school year. If you want to just skip ahead to whichever grade level your learner is a part of, or your learners are a part of, the slides that are pertinent to each grade level are here for you. You don't need to listen to the voiceover if you don't want to. Whether you are a seasoned kindergarten parent or this is your first kindergartner, we want you to know that our assessment plan is based on the Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted and Talented Students, which requires all kindergartners to be considered for gifted and talented services. In CISD, we collect at least 3 data points or 3 measurements to identify learners for gifted and talented services. At the kindergarten level, we'll be utilizing quantitative data measures through a standardized nonverbal assessment that will be administered in January. And we will also be looking at quantitative data points from standardized assessments we administer as a matter of practice over the course of the school year. For qualitative measures, we have some standardized teacher rating scales that will be used to collect qualitative data. Classroom educators will complete those by mid-January, and our GT specialists may, based on that information and other data points, conduct interviews with learners as needed. All of our assessment points, that 3 or more on each learner, will be reviewed by a campus gifted and talented committee. These are educators and administrators and counselors that have the 30 hours of training in gifted education that is required by the state in order to be part of this committee. No single person makes an identification recommendation in this school district. We rely on a committee to do that. And based on the data collected, again, those qualitative and quantitative data points, they will determine whether a learner at this time demonstrates a need for GT services. It does happen from time to time that the data points are inconclusive, and our GT specialists may be asked to gather some additional data points. If that happens, you will be notified on an individual basis. All other notifications at the kindergarten level for identification, whether the learner demonstrates a need for service or doesn't demonstrate a need at this time, families will be notified by March 1st, and services will begin as soon as those that are identified return a permission to serve form. Moving on to first and fourth grade GT assessment. I know this sounds a little bit strange that those two would be together, but certainly given the circumstances of the last 2 years or so, we are looking at doing more comprehensive assessment now that all learners will be back in the building than we were able to do by the parameters set for GT assessment last year by the Texas Education Agency. So we have similar plans for first and fourth grade GT assessment for the 21-22 school year. Again, all of our assessment plans are predicated on the guidelines that are provided for us for the Texas State Plan. And again, we utilize at least 3 measures as part of the identification process. As part of our assessment process for first and fourth grades, one of the quantitative measures is a nonverbal assessment that will be administered the week of November 8th through the 12th. The district will also use quantitative data points that we have obtained through the standardized assessments that are administered as a matter of course over the school year. As a qualitative measure, we will be looking at a variety of standardized teacher rating scales that will collect information for us on the traits and attributes of GT learners that are more difficult to quantify. And classroom educators will be completing those scales throughout the fall semester. This may extend into January. Part of it'll depend on how quickly we're able to turn around some of this assessment data. And certainly, as we are actively looking for those that require our service, we want to be sure that we're doing a comprehensive job. So we cannot give a definitive date for when those assessment scales will be due to the GT specialist at this time. Based on all that information, the GT specialist again may conduct interviews as it appears we might need some other information on some of our learners. Again, all data points, all the assessment information we have, quantitative and qualitative, will be reviewed by the campus gifted and talented committee. And again, these are educators, administrators, and counselors that have 30 hours of training in gifted education and have participated in an orientation that we have designed here in the school district. Based on that collected data, the GTC will determine whether gifted services is appropriate for a learner or not at this time. It is possible that the GTC will request additional information on some of our learners. We have been able to collect an awful lot of information over the course of the 18 months, but some of that has not been face-to-face. And so we may be looking for some additional data points. And if that happens with your learner, then we will certainly notify you individually. All other notifications will occur on or before March 1st, 2022. I want to talk about this for just a second and say that it is our intention to do it well before March 1st for our first and fourth graders. However, again, with our timelines being slightly modified this year because of the virtual learning opportunity that was available for our families, as well as some of our other assessment windows at the beginning of the year being pushed back just slightly to the end of the first 9 weeks. We just don't yet know what date to set. So on or before March 1st, the emphasis really there is on before. For any first or fourth grader that is currently identified, we have some local guidelines that state that elementary learners already identified will not be reassessed until fifth grade. That is correlated to the state plan for gifted education, which says that reassessment would not occur in the elementary schools, but if it does, it cannot occur any more than one time. And so we save that for fifth grade as it helps us decide what courses are most appropriate based on the learner's needs, interests, and strengths as they approach their middle school career. So currently identified first and fourth graders will not participate in the universal screening. More information will come from your campuses about what will happen with those learners on those days. Second grade GT assessment this school year, these learners will not be universally screened, but we do want to explain what the process is, as our GT assessment is really an ongoing process across the district. Again, while we don't have a formal assessment or a universal screening at second grade during this school year, our identification process is ongoing. What that really means is on the next slide. Parents and guardians can refer learners for assessment. The fall window has already closed, and that assessment is actually occurring this first full week of October. If a family is interested in referring their learner for the spring semester, we've provided the website where you can go. There will be a form on the right-hand side that will open in late December and close in early January, where a family can refer a learner for assessment. I would encourage anyone at second grade who is considering doing that to contact the campus GTI specialist for more information regarding those referrals. It is our standard practice in CISD to assess learners at third and fifth grade, so a little bit about that process is on the following slides. Again, our assessment plan is predicated on the guidance provided for us in the Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted and Talented Students. And again, we use at least 3 measures as part of our identification process. Those quantitative measures include an aptitude test that will be administered the week of November 1st through 5th as part of the identification process for our third and fifth graders. The district may also utilize quantitative data points that come from standardized assessments administered over the course of the school year. Qualitative measures really rely on some standardized teacher rating scales that we use to discern and identify traits of learners who may benefit from gifted and talented services. Classroom educators will be asked to complete those scales on each learner throughout the fall semester. And based on that information, GTI specialists may conduct interviews as necessary as part of the identification process. All gathered assessment information, all those quantitative and qualitative data points on each learner will be reviewed by the Campus Gifted and Talented Committee. That is a group of educators, administrators, and counselors who have completed 30 hours of training in gifted education and an orientation to how Coppell ISD identifies gifted and talented learners. Based on that collected data, the GTC, that group, that committee, will determine whether a learner demonstrates a need for gifted and talented services. Sometimes the GTC looks at the data and says it's inconclusive and asks for additional data points. If that happens in the process of screening your learner, you will be notified on an individual basis. All other notifications will occur on or before March 1st, 2022. That seems pretty late. I want to stress that before is most likely, but with all of the assessment windows being pushed back a little bit, we wanted to be able to give you a definitive date to look at, but know that we believe that that notification will occur before March 1st. If a learner at third grade is currently identified, then our local guidelines state that he or she will not be reassessed until fifth grade. Third graders who are already identified will have an alternate assessment plan for the 3 days that assessment is occurring in their regular classroom, and more information will come from your campuses based on that information. At the fifth grade level, as we are preparing our learners to move to middle school, we want to make sure that our currently identified and potentially newly identified fifth grade GT learners understand that in transitioning to middle school, learners may only enroll in the GT courses that align with their area of eligibility. So identification for GT services can be in a single subject, but it can also be in multiple subjects. So an identification, for example, could be only in science, or it could be in a kind of a cluster or multiple subjects, science and mathematics. You could also have a learner who is identified general intellectual ability, which would be all 4 core areas, and that would be language arts, social studies, science, and mathematics. Based on whatever your learner's area of identification is, those would be the courses that he or she is allowed to register for that are GT specific as they move into middle school. So again, an example, if a learner is identified gifted in science and mathematics, the GT classes that would be available for that learner would be the GT science and the GT mathematics courses. they would not be eligible for the GT Language Arts or the GT Social Studies courses. And moms and dads and guardians, I want to emphasize that very few people are gifted in all four core subjects. Most of us have a particular bent, an area of strength, and the purpose of this practice is not to be exclusive, but to provide the appropriate instructional setting based on the specific identified needs of our learners. It is okay to reinforce and provide accelerated and or strength-based instruction in just a band of subjects and sometimes even in a single subject. For families with learners in 6th through 12th grade, our GT assessment process is really by referral. And so there's more information on the coming slides about that. We assess anytime the need arises. And so in secondary, parents must refer their learners for GT assessment. Those opportunities are made available once a semester. That's already happened for the fall semester. As a matter of fact, as I am recording this, that assessment is happening this week. The spring window will open in late December and close again in early January for referrals. So we've provided the link for you for families to go and watch for that referral form to open. Any questions or comments regarding GT assessment can be directed to me. I'm Dr. Dina Dinas. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning. It is our privilege to serve all learners in Coppell ISD and to have a model that doesn't necessarily require identification for learners to receive academic extensions. There's more information about that on our website, but if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me, and thank you for your patience this year as we have worked through another interesting start full of opportunities for us to innovate and get creative in how we best meet the needs of all of our learners. Thank you.